Iris Öhrn. I just wanted to really welcome you. I have loved meeting you in Göteborg and in California before, and let's take it away, Iris.
Hello, everybody. Let's see if I can. Uy, cabellara. Just a minute. So let's see if I manage the technicalities here. Now, Dela, just a minute. Do you see it right?
We
You
see
see, I will
it
put
there you go. Presentation mode.
very
Perfect.
good. Okay, so I think I am hoping to give you today another perspective. So as you all know, the gender, just a minute, let me move. I have this. Okay, so as you all know, the gender roles that we accept today are not universal. They are constructs from the 5th century Catholic Europe, from the time of the Roman Empire. And women roles at that time and still today, they were limited to motherhood and reproductive roles. Women were expected to be obedient, passive, and quiet. They were and still are objects of pleasure and desire. But these constructs, it affected not only women's socioeconomic situation and position. In fact, it affected something more that has been mentioned today, something more so critical and important, their health. So my name is Iris Öhrn, and I'm working at Business Region Göteborg in the West Coast in Sweden, and I am working as an advisor for life sciences. So my work is actually to help foreign companies establish in Gothenburg and West Sweden. So Gothenburg is a second largest city in Sweden. As you might know, it is a very knowledge-intensive region. So despite of us having only 60% of the Swedish companies and 70% of the Swedish populations and employees, actually we stand for over 35% of all Sweden's business R&D investment. So we are talking about a very industrialized city, a city that we can say is the industrial center in Scandinavia, when you can find over 70% of the industry within a radius of 500 kilometers. And what is also relevant in this perspective is that the Nordics, despite being a very small region of only 26 million people, is a region that is very export intensive. So we have some focus areas, automotive, manufacturing, IT, clean tech, logistics, and also life sciences. So that's why we are here today. And here are some facts about the life science sector in West Sweden and Gothenburg. In Sweden, we have about 4,000 life science companies. 600 out of them are located in West Sweden, and the sector is actually employing around 11,000 people. We have 17 hospitals in the region, but the largest one and the one that is also the largest in the Nordics is the Sahlgrenska Hospital. It is also the national center and the center in Sweden for clinical trials and research. The healthcare sector in Sweden is publicly funded. We have universal healthcare, and what I think is relevant here is that, for instance, this is data from 2023, where you can see that we invested over 66 billion Swedish crowns last year only in West Sweden in the provision of care. This is actually 84% of the whole regional budget is put it into healthcare. And why is this important? It is then important because the public sector has a very important role and can make an impact if they want in women's health. However, as you might know, there are many challenges in Sweden and in Europe in general. The healthcare costs are expected to continue to grow due to, as you might know, due to the growing elderly population. So the group of people over 80 years old, and this is not only Sweden, but it's the whole so Europe, the group of people over 80 years old is growing at accelerated pace. This means more cost for the healthcare, as these people also are living with several chronic diseases. They need more elderly care facilities, they need more home care assistance, and many of them are actually taking over 10 pharmaceuticals daily. We estimate today that we will need in Sweden over 70,000 caregivers if we are going to give everybody the health care that they deserve. So now it comes, as you can see here, it comes our biggest dilemma. And I think it was mentioned today in the first presentation. This is data from West Sweden, but you can see similar data from Sweden and most European countries. Women make up 80% of all healthcare workers in West Sweden, and 86% if you are only counting nurses and assistant nurses. Just to give you an idea, of the 17,000 nurses we have in West Sweden, 70% are female, and we have 2,700 only that are male nurses. Another interesting data is that the total female workforce in West Sweden, in total, we have 40,000 people, and only 1,442 of them are in a leadership position. So this kind of inequality also leads to inefficiency in the system and in patient care, apart of course from a lot of despair for these women. Then as an extra fact, just to say that over 30% of these women are actually foreign born. So you see here another intersectionality aspect. And when you look at Sweden and the number of people that have the group that has the highest number of sick leave, you will find that people working within social care has the highest number of sick leave days per year, around between 13 and 15. So what is 178,000? This is the total number of nurses in Sweden. And I actually, preparing this presentation, got to know that this is the most common occupation among women in Sweden, and actually the most common occupation in the entire country. We also know about that the healthcare sector is in the middle of a transformation, and we know of the different reforms in the system. Many of them had led to the creation of new tech-related jobs that are right now better paid and that often have a higher status. Unfortunately, these positions are primarily occupied by men. We have male nurses, but they are often working in the ambulances, intensive care units, as radiologists, physiotherapists, etc. So I was trying to find the light in the tunnel when I also found that actually the healthcare sector is the sector in Sweden with the highest number of women-led companies. So 64% is the number of women CEO in the private healthcare sector in Sweden, while 28% is the number of women-led companies in other sectors in Sweden. So you can say that these numbers are very promising. However, we need to take into account that in Sweden there are about 15,000 private healthcare providers, and over 93% of them are actually companies under 20 employees. In fact, the fact is that 30% of the market is dominated by 10 large firms. And here you can see that you have 8 out of 10 male CEOs. So this is also saying something. So by now we can all agree on that the system itself is structurally biased. And if we are going back to our initial statement, we can also say that these disparities are not only affecting women's socioeconomic rights, but as has also been mentioned before, this is affecting their health, because especially the system hasn't considered that the healthcare needs are different for men and women. And I know that many of my other colleagues are going to go into that matter deeply. So the consequences are many. Some have been mentioned, just to say a few, but the list, as I said, is long. We know that women receive less expensive medications. They have higher prevalence of mental health diseases. They get less remittance to specialists. They have, and we observe, diagnostic delays for several conditions like endometriosis. They receive less recommendations for cardiovascular diseases. They are also under treated for things like osteoporosis. So we can conclude and we can say that yes, women might cost more for the healthcare sector. There are data on it, but they are costing more not in terms of quality, but in terms of quantity of care. So the real problem for many women, and that's something that is not new, is to try to step out of their traditional roles. We know, for instance, this is Joan of Arc. She was not condemned for her political or religious views, but for dressing as a man and leading soldiers into battle. And the same happens today when women try to establish themselves as leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, etc., in our male-dominated system. This portrait, which I like, it despite Jesus in a very classical, idealized, masculine form, we see strength, power, authority, and leadership all in one. This is a very famous painting. Uh, what is very interesting for me here is that this painting, and when I look at it, I also associate it with the image I have of Jesus, his empathy, his service, and his fight for those in need. So it says to me that it is okay to allow women within the healthcare to lead with compassion and care. So women face many challenges. I won't mention all of them, but you all know it. They are underrepresented as entrepreneurs, is in STEM education, in the STEM workforce, in leadership. They don't have positions in VC firms. They are not business angels. They receive very little funding because they are not the ones making the decisions. The media very seldom mention women. We have very few role models, etc., etc., etc. But I'm happy to be here today and that we are here today because this is also a proof that we are not giving up, that we are telling, we are yelling, we are fighting for our rights and for the place for us in the healthcare and life science sector. I'm also hopeful because right now there are a lot of things and initiatives going on in Europe. We have institutions like the European Commission. I think that the public sector is very active in this area. For instance, like you can see here in 2023, 11% of the whole budget for EU research and innovation went directly or indirectly to promote gender equality. 11% is very low, but I choose to see progress. And the overall budget is around 100 billion euro for 4 years. They have also made sure that women are well represented among the experts deciding on this public funding. As I said, we need to make sure that women are in the leadership position. So if we put them in the teams that are making the investment decisions, hopefully the chances of them getting more funding increases. So we need to approach it from the structure, okay? We also see some promising numbers in Sweden and EU. When we look, for instance, at the representation of women in academic institution, we see, for instance, here that Sweden has made progress with regard to women leadership when you see there as board members in academic institution, in grade A positions, meaning women as professor, as researchers, and so on. The numbers are still not equal, but I see some progress, even though it's small. However, when we look at women as inventors, they are still, on the 10%, both in Europe and Sweden. But even with the progress, slow, big or not, even with it, we risk cementing inequality. And we all know what the technological future is about: biomanufacturing, AI, space exploration, green tech, quantum, etc. And this is good, but if I look at Sweden, and in this table you can see it, the majority of the women that are graduating, they choose areas related to health and welfare, arts, humanities, law, and there are still very few choosing IT, engineering, manufacturing, sectors that are critical for future health solutions. In Europe, it's a similar situation. Europe has made progress, but still only 13% of the IT specialists in Sweden, only 30% are female, and the number in Europe is 19%. So we risk building future systems that reinforce outdated gender roles. Women future employment opportunities, according to me, are at risk if we don't solve this problem. And we risk cementing the inequality in the jobs that we see today. So this is another example. I was talking about inventorship before. This is data from it's a WIPO showing that Sweden only accounts for 70% of all inventors globally and 30% of the ones in biochemistry and in biotechnology and chemistry, which is good for our sector. However, when you see and you look at the number of women that have won Nobel prizes, it's incredible to see that you have 8 women winner out of 191 and 13 in physiology and medicine out of 230, which is still very low. However, I remain optimistic. In the last 3 years, we have seen structural changes within EU with new EU directives targeting gender equality. The work-life balance directive, the equal pay directive, the women's on board directive, etc., etc. We have also seen several financial instruments in place, especially at EU level, but also, of course, applicable and relevant for Sweden. A lot of training, not only to empower women, but also to investors and banks. And there are, so there is a movement. And there are also specific programs targeting women health and bias in AI data. And I know that some of the speakers today will dig into these questions. So for Gothenburg, there are also new times. We have companies like Profundus, Alcinova, Amferio, Testray, and many others that have women as CEO. Some of them are actually targeting women health diseases, not all of them, but some of them. These are companies in which these women are not only innovating, they are actually leading it. They are fighting for change and being a symbol and a role model for many other women. And I really believe that if we see more women becoming scientists, inventors, entrepreneurs, we will also see more solutions within women's health. And of course, if you are really here and you invest, want to partner, etc., please reach to us and we will be happy to connect you to any of them. So it has taken us 2 millennia to come here to where we are today. We know that the journey has been long, but every little contribution matters. I'm very happy for this seminar and for everything that is going on. I want to keep positive, and it seems as the traditional women roles are written in stone, but I'm confident that we can change that. And just like this Greek sculpture, I strongly believe we can step out of old cemented structures, because at the end of the day, true progress is not about shifting roles, it's about expanding them. Thank you very much.